I'm Kiyan.
And this is Just Your Doctor, that podcast of Neapolitan hair, because this week we revisited the Monster of Peladon,
Written by Brian Hayles.
directed by Lenny Main.
And aired from March 23rd to April 27th, 1974.
We're going back to Peladon. You know? We're going back to Peladon.
Again.
Again.
For the fourth time. Because our first watch of this was us going back to Peladon. And then, for the third time, because we didn't watch the first one. So, now we're going back to when we went back to Peladon.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Return to Peladon 2.
Well,
Peladon.
The perfect segue, because originally the story was titled Return to Peladon.
No, really, I didn't know that.
When Brian Hayles wrote it originally, because apparently The Curse of Peladon was really popular when it aired, and Terrence Dicks, script editor, was like, how about we do it again? Brian Hayles was, they held a paycheck out, and he's like, sure. Apparently the original script was vastly different than what we saw, though. In the original story, Ortron and Eckersley are working together, the entire story, trying to break away from the Federation, and basically become trisilicate barons, I guess. It was originally going to feature King Peladon, the original, and Thalira was an advisor who was set to marry King Peladon, but then when King Peladon had an affair with Joe Grant in Cursed, Thalira decided to break off the engagement. And also originally Sarah and Eckersley are romantically involved. So basically it's literally just Curse of Peladon 2. Electric Boogaloo is what I'm hearing.
The return. Yeah, so obviously they changed a lot of that, but I feel like in doing so, they like, this story is almost like the reverse of Curse of Peladon, because if you remember back to Curse of Peladon, the Ice Warriors are like not the villains in that. And in this, the Ice Warriors show up and they're part of the Federation and all that, and you're like, okay, like, sweet, we're gonna get the Ice Warriors are gonna come in and solve everything like they did in Curse of Peladon. But no.
Well, apparently, originally the Ice Warriors were defeated with the Doctor, like, telling the Federation that the Ice Warriors are, like, being bad, so the Federation threatens to destroy their home planet.
Wow. Threatens to destroy Mars, which would, like, destroy Earth.
Yeah! Apparently, Terrence Dicks wasn't super pleased with Brian Hayles' original script, and because Brian Hayles tried to streamline it, because apparently it was getting too complex, so he tried to streamline it, and Dix wasn't pleased, so they paid Hayles, and he went on his way, and Dix was like, I guess I'm going to have to get in the weeds and finish this off myself.
Wow.
Which might be why this is less... what's the word I'm looking for? Less
enjoyable.
Good than Curse of Peladon?
Yeah.
But what I'm noticing something, that all these ones we're revisiting had some sort of like catastrophic failure behind the scenes with the creation of the story. Like, I'm starting to notice a running theme here, like, unintentionally.
I think next week when we get to Underworld, though, that's just going to be Bob Baker and Dave Martin, like, throwing a bunch of ideas in a hat, shaking it up, and tossing whatever the result is. And, a lot of the times it worked, but some of the times it didn't.
I would describe Underworld as a catastrophic failure, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
So right on, before we even begin, let me just say that all the mentions of the Federation in this, like, made me think of Blake 7, of course, and maybe just lent credence to, like, Blake 7 and Doctor Who really are in the same universe. And whenever they talked about, like, joining the Federation and, like, showing the Federation that they were ready to, like, be fully fledged members, I was like, is that the best idea? Like, Servalan's in charge, and, Federation has never shown itself to be a great entity. Maybe Galaxy 5 had the better idea here.
Yeah, see, I didn't think of Blake 7. I thought of Star Trek the whole time, to be honest. But that's probably because I've been watching a lot of Star Trek recently. So...
Huh.
Apparently Galaxy 5 is, I was reading, is like retconned into being a terrorist organization.
What?
In a book entitled Placebo Effect, which is an an Eighth Doctor book written by Gary Russell, and he retcons them into being a terrorist organization instead of like another galaxy, which is what I was assuming while watching this.
Well, yeah, so I was assuming that too. And technically they never come out and say Galaxy 5 is a galaxy. Or
okay, technicalities.
But yeah.
All right, to technicalities.
I mean, they talk about it as if it's another Federation-like entity.
Yes.
And the name Galaxy 5 makes you think it's a galaxy.
Well, but it just made me think of Galaxy 4.
Yeah, same. Galaxy 4 is still the most forgettable Doctor Who story. Even above Underworld, I cannot remember what Galaxy 4 is about. I cannot remember a single moment, a single line, a single shot from Galaxy 4.
I remember shots from Galaxy 4. I remember like visual shots from Galaxy 4, but if you ask me to describe them, it's just like a nebulous void. Like I wouldn't actually be able to describe to you what it looked like. I can visualize the shots in my head very clearly, but if you asked me what the hell it was, I...
Yeah.
It's like the mind erasing things that the Men in Black have. It's like the television version of that.
Yeah, so unless there's another Doctor Who story that is so forgettable that I can't even remember its existence, then I'm going to have to say Galaxy 4 is like the most forgettable one.
What about the gunfighters?
No, I remember that fairly well. I at least remember like a scene from it, if not two.
I saw on Twitter someone like, I don't know how I never noticed this before, that like William Hartnell's like missing a tooth in the 10th planet, and
yeah, you didn't know that? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I didn't know either.
They posted a picture and they're like, "This is really obvious." I'm like, "Damn, how did I miss that?" And they're like, "Was this like, did William Hartnell have like something going on with his teeth that they wrote into the gunfighters as like a canon thing that happened to him to explain it?" And I was like, "Whoa,
I doubt that. I think it was just a continuity thing." But hey, what do I know? I'm just guessing.
I don't know. I mean, we're out of the First Doctor's era again for the second time because we're now deep in the Pertwee era. Because for the second time, we're watching the penultimate story of a Doctor for this Redux revisit.
Yeah, I forgot this was the second to last one. And according to the Doctor Wiki, this is the last story that doesn't have Tom Baker in it until 1982. Until Florida Doomsday.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Which is insane to think about. Makes sense, but it's insane to think about.
Yeah. You know, Florida Doomsday is another forgettable story because I don't remember anything about the plot of that except that the Master wants to blow up the universe and the Doctor falls off a radio tower.
No, that was Castrovalva. Florida Doomsday was yeah, because we had Castrovalva, Logopolis. Or was it the other way around? I always forget. It
was Logopolis and then Castrovalva. Logopolis was the regeneration story.
Yeah, so we had Logopolis, Castrovalva, and then Florida Doomsday was the one where they were stuck on that ship with like the glowing walls.
That tells me nothing. Yeah. That actually reinforces my point that it's the most forgettable one because now I remember even less about it because I was actually thinking of Logopolis.
Yeah, I barely remember Florida Doomsday. It was like some council on a ship was going to blow something up and the Doctor needed to stop them or something like that. I don't know. Watch that be completely wrong.
You know, I'm extremely curious to see what we're going to rewatch for the as you could tell, we're clearly making this up as we go along.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, my vote is for whatever, Fury from the Deep or whatever the Fifth Doctor story with the Sea Devils. Yeah, that one. I truly despise that story.
When they did the live tweet along of Dalek the other day with who wrote Dalek? Reese Shearsmith?
I don't remember. Beats the hell out of me.
The people live tweeting it, the people who wrote it and production crew, like were making this joke about how when they didn't know if they were going to get the rights to the Daleks, the guy who wrote Dalek, who now I want to actually check who it was, had to plan out some different monsters, and so Robert Shearman, and he posted like fake quote real unquote excerpts from scripts where it was different monsters instead of the Dalek, and one of them is it's the Merca. The Doctor arrives in this museum And the guy's holding the most dangerous monster in the universe, and it's the Merca.
Fantastic.
You know, I would have, really liked Dalek. I would have considered Dalek the greatest thing ever made if it was actually Agador contained in that vault.
Bring Agador, but I forgot Agador, dies.
I forgot Agador dies in this one too until episode 5, and I have a note that's like, oh wait, Agador dies in this, doesn't he?
Yeah, that wasn't the only thing I forgot about this, though, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah, let's just jump right into this bad boy. So episode 1.
Yeah.
6 episodes of hell incoming is my first note.
It wasn't, so this was, I guess just to preface all this, I know we said we're jumping in, but this was like the opposite of the Space Pirates for me. I disliked this one. I dislike this one more now. I think it's worse than what my memory told me it was.
I think my opinion on this remains unchanged, actually. I'm going to be honest. I didn't really hate it. I didn't really like it either. And I think that's always been my opinion of this story. So I'm going to say that I'm actually pretty much in the same boat I was before watching it.
All right.
But I definitely didn't hate it as much as you did.
So it begins with a cardboard motorcycle with a fan attached to it being hauled through some caves.
It's the time flow analog.
It does have it does kind of, remind you of the time flow analog. I'm only calling this out because there are things in this story that look better prop wise, and 2, Doctor Who has done better prop wise, even the time flow analog. So this just looks odd. This is the Sonic Lance. Was this the first introduction of the Sonic Lance into Doctor Who?
I want to say yes.
Not that the Sonic Lance is like a big Doctor Who tool, but it's back. So
yeah, it has come back actually, which is weird to think that's like the most major thing that this story contributed to Doctor Who lore.
In a way, yeah.
So, but yeah, the Sonic Lance, and then while they're in the caves, one of the people gets killed by Agador, allegedly.
Yeah, we get through the dialogue that the miners are very hesitant to use the Sonic Lance, and now that they're being killed when they use it, they really don't want to use it.
Yeah, because they believe the technology is the reason why Agador is angry at them, basically, because they think that Agador is upset at them.
Right. So maybe I'm remembering totally wrong here, but didn't they reveal Agador as the fluffy little Alf-looking creature he is at the end of Curse of Peladon?
I think so.
And then they just because I remember talking about this vaguely the first time we discussed this episode, is they just go back to worshipping Agador. They don't really change this, Peladon doesn't make a shift or anything,
Yeah, but I mean, think about it. If the Hebrew god literally just came down to Earth right now, and he just looked like a Great Dane or something, would that really shake your faith, or would it just would you just be well, God can appear in many forms and just increase your faith?
Well, look, I have no faith to shake, so
you're telling me you don't believe in our God Savior Agador?
In Yahweh.
Man, my notes. Wow, my notes for this are noticeably really bad.
My notes for so the longer the episodes go, or the longer the story goes on, my notes for getting into episode 6 are just oh yeah, that's one of my notes. It's just oh yeah.
I mean, my 8th note of this story is Latex Man is very pleased with all of this. Penis Man is here. And I think
I have no idea what that refers to.
It's Eckersley and Alpha Centauri. Because Eckersley was wearing latex in most of the story. And we all know the stories about Alpha Centauri.
The legend of Alpha Centauri.
So eventually the Doctor shows up. I'm just going to fast forward through half of episode 1 because it's really dull until the Doctor shows up. So The Doctor shows up and they're in the caves and they literally get lost in the caves.
Yeah, the third Doctor tries to play it off like he always does, but he can't for long. They're lost.
Well, because it's actually pretty funny. Like, I forgot how humorous Pertwee is in the role, because they're going through the caves and then Sarah's like, why don't we just go back to the TARDIS and like go home? Like, this clearly isn't working. And the Doctor goes, well, one, because I really want to check in on my old friend, the King of Peladon. And two, because we're lost.
Yeah. Yeah, if only they had Bessie. Could just speed down the catacombs.
I think you mean the Who-mobile. Thank you very much.
I don't think the Who-mobile would fit, Maybe Bessie wouldn't either, but...
Every time I think of the Who-mobile, I just think about that one scene where they run that guy over with the Who-mobile. Where he's like lying on the ground just looking at the clouds and the Who-mobile just runs over him and he's just like, wow, what the heck?
So anyway, we find out that Peladon, now having joined the Federation in some limited capacity, is being forced to go to war with Galaxy 5 because Galaxy 5 launched an unprovoked attack on the Federation, and according to Ortron, who is Queen Thalira's aide/sorcerer or whatever.
Yeah, he's like the high priest, but his official title is Chancellor.
Yeah. So according to him, they need to accept the responsibilities as well as the benefits, which I guess isn't bad advice.
Yeah, but he turns out to have his own motivation for this whole thing. There's a lot of political scheming in this that I'll say is done way better than the Massacre, because the Doctor is actually involved in it this time.
It is done way better, but if memory serves, it's done even better than this in Curse of Peladon. So I'm knocking at points for that vague memory of 6 years ago that I have.
I thought you liked it when shows just did the same thing again.
Yeah, but looking back, I don't know that this was even that was actually, I think I wrote this in my notes. I think I wrote it. Let me just check. But I was like, yeah, this gets really overly political, and I don't really even like how that's all done. Oh no, I wrote that a lot of this would work better if we didn't know as much, because we know that I guess it's a twist, but we know that Ortron is not on their side, Yeah, but and I guess the twist is that Eckersley and the Ice Warriors are, but so what? Ortron is still not on board.
Well, Ortron kind of teams up with Thalira later on because of Eckersley and the Ice Warriors. It's very interesting how his allegiances shift like sand through the hourglass. These are the days of our life.
Just goes to show you that the only way you can be united is in a stronger hate against a greater force.
Yeah, that's pretty much literally exactly one of my notes.
Anyway, back to the story at hand. The Doctor and Sarah are being pursued, and they find a secret passage
into Agador's throne, or I guess what is supposed to be their version of a chapel.
It's the Temple of Agador, yeah. I say that as if it's
you say that like it's so obvious. Oh, yes, it's the Temple of Agador. How could you not realize that, Dylan? My God.
God. Napoleon Dynamite. It's a Temple of Agador. God.
Ortron actually makes some valid points here, because the Doctor immediately gets captured and he's like, I'm the Doctor, and Thalira's like, the Doctor was a friend of my father, and Ortron's like, he could be a disguise, he could literally be anyone, we have no proof.
Nah, Ortron was being just a stick in the mud here.
No, I think he was being and then Alpha Centauri comes in, she's like, I can vouch for the Doctor, but not this other chick that's with him. I've never met her in my life. And this is when we get the start of the shall we say the feminist tilt of the story, where it was Ortron, where Eckersley, someone says she's of no importance when they're talking about Sarah Jane, and she's very visibly offended by this comment. Yeah,
there's a lot of gender and also class stuff in this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done particularly in an interesting way, or the ideas that it expresses are not all that compelling. It's just standard stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it wasn't really standard necessarily in 74, right? I don't know. There's an element of looking back at it through the years of 55 years of progress. Well, not 55, 45 years of progress. And surely things haven't changed as much as we would have liked in 45 years. But I guess my point is, like, maybe this wasn't so commonplace or out there necessarily like in 74.
Maybe not especially not for a science fiction TV show like Doctor Who, but still, like, we can't really put ourselves in those shoes fully. We still have to watch through our 2020 eyes. And through my 2020 eyes, it wasn't that interesting.
That's an interesting thought, though, because, like, yeah, if you heavily base your story arc around delivering some message, whether it be political or social or, whatever your message is, like, in time, presumably, many of these messages will become outdated, and, like, the more heavily you base your story in that message, the more your story also kind of becomes outdated. Is what I'm talking about making sense?
Kind of. I don't necessarily fully think that that's the case, though, because, like, if you're trying to make some, like, rhetorical point with a story, and there's this, I'll try and see if I can find it online. But there's this, I forget what it's actually called, but it's by this guy named I don't know his first name. His last name is like Kenny Avi, something like that. And he has this theory of communication, where he separates, like, is it called the theory of communication? Whatever. I'll put it in the show notes, whatever I'm talking about. I don't even really know. But, like, he separates, like, the literary aims of communication with, like, the rhetorical aims. And I don't know if I don't know too much about the theory, obviously. I just started reading about it. But, like, perhaps if you, like, try and couch a story like this one as having more of a rhetorical aim than, like, a literary one, and I don't know that those two are separate at all, then maybe what you're saying makes sense. I don't know if what I just said made sense, but but, like, like, if you're trying to make an argument, like, in real life, like, take the story element out of it for a second. Like, you're just trying to make an argument and convince someone of something, so you're using rhetoric. Like, that can we can pretty much say, like, yeah, that can be outdated. Because you can just convince everyone in the world, and, like, society will change, and you won't have to make that argument anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say that, like, the story itself is doing that, then, yeah, maybe what you're saying makes sense, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Yes.
And I bring up this theory because this guy, Kenny Avi, or however you pronounce his name, separates the literary aims of, I guess, writing or communication in general with the rhetorical aims. He separates those two things. And he has a couple other aims as well. Which I just bring up because I don't know that that's, like, the case that you can do that. But it's interesting to think about, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment at the very least. I don't know if it has any merit or not. I was just throwing it out there as a thought.
But also there's the thing of, like, when it comes to the most recent season of Doctor Who and stories like Orphan 55 that really hammer, whatever home at the end, it's like, maybe that's something you still need to hear again and again and again. Maybe this is too. Maybe, like, you just need to keep watching Monster of Peladon again and again and again. Because, you say things have changed, and to an extent they have, but, like, have they, like, to a big extent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So maybe everyone just needs to watch Monster of Peladon every day.
I did watch this in one day, just back to back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah, as did I. And I don't want to do it again, let me tell you.
Oh, boy.
So this story now begins... Oh, it actually began with this, but I just realized it right now at where we are in the summary, that this story falls into the trap that, like, the first Doctor's era kind of did, which is that, like, there's a group of characters who look almost exactly the same, and it's very difficult to tell one apart from the other.
Yeah, so first we meet Blore, who dies at the end of episode 1 in the cliffhanger at Agador's hand. Then we also meet multiple other miners.
Yeah, the two main ones are Gebek and Edis. But there's also like Rima, and there's also like a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, the only way you can tell Gebek and Emus apart is the fact that Gebek is the reasonable one and Emus is not.
Yeah, Edis. Yeah, Gebek and Edis were, I think, cast really poorly because even their faces look almost exactly the same.
Well, speaking of familiar faces, Donald G is back. Major Ian in the Space Pirates playing Eckersley in this story.
Yeah.
Wonder if they're related.
So, yeah, that's what happens. The Doctor basically says that he can go check out the trisilicate mines to try and figure out what's going on. Because he doesn't think that Agador is really tormenting the people. He thinks it's some sort of trick. And that's when the Queen's champion dies, Blore. He goes along with them to, I guess, protect the Doctor. And was it just me, or was like Blore not able to speak? Because it just seemed like all of his lines were just like weird grunts.
Yeah, Blore is just kind of... That's a good thing he dies at the end of episode 1. We don't have to try and decipher what he's saying for the rest of the story.
Yeah, they make mention of how like Peladon is still a feudal society and is like way like less advanced than presumably all the other members of the Federation. So there's like some element of like maybe this guy is just like kind of enslaved. Like he's the Queen's champion, but like maybe he became the champion by winning in like some sort of Colosseum or something.
I seem to remember King Peladon having a champion too, who also like immediately dies in Curse of Peladon. And is completely and utterly useless.
Man, where this story should have gone is like someone was trying to recreate the events of Curse of Peladon for some sinister reason. Because there's so many similar, like it almost is just like a version 2 with like some stuff different.
Yeah. Sorry, I was yawning and I didn't want to get it on recording. I mean, there were a lot of ways that this story could have been better. And obviously, the story didn't do any of them. So we're left with what we've got.
Well, so yeah, at this point in the story, Edis has broken off from Gebek because he and the rest of the miners think Gebek is being too diplomatic with the changes that they're trying to demand.
Yeah,
like
he wants to just stage a full-on miners' revolt. Because he's like, well, they can't do anything without us. And this is when I realized that it was really dumb of the Federation to base their entire society around one single mineral that is like apparently actually pretty rare. Because at some point, Eckersley mentions that the reason why they're so desperate for the trisilicate on Peladon is because literally everything they build is built out of trisilicate. Every computer, every spaceship, it all is built out of trisilicate.
Maybe that's how the Federation came to power, and there's just no other way that they can continue other than by using trisilicate. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Anyway, there's a big cave-in the mines. The Doctor gets trapped, and Blore dies.
Yeah, and that's how episode 1 ends, and episode 2 begins with, the Miners' Revolt.
Yeah, so Sarah actually goes with Alpha Centauri into this room that I forgot about, but once I saw it, I remembered the room. Like, I remembered this set. It's a pretty striking set, I think. Yeah. There's nothing particularly interesting about it, but I remembered it, you know?
Yeah, no, this control room is a very striking set that I remembered as well. Like, it was something that had stuck in my mind, and as soon as it showed up, I instantly, like, flashbacks to when the first time I watched this story.
I think that might have something to do with the fact that there is a fourth wall to this set. Like, a lot of the control room sets in Classic Who are just like the 3 walls thing, and that you're just watching from as if it's like a play or whatever. But this one, like, if you think about it, it actually has like the characters come closer to the camera to use the machinery that they're using. Right?
Yeah.
They're like when you're watching on your screen, they're in the bottom left corner a lot of the time, using stuff that's like from your point of view, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they shot this room basically from one angle, was basically the point here.
Yeah, it's from one angle, but like unlike a lot of one angle sets on Doctor Who and in general, there's an element of there's a wall with stuff on it that you're looking at this from, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like how they always shot the TARDIS from the same kind of angle, right? Like we always saw it from the same side.
I guess, yeah. And that's what I. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's a lot of like set design and costume design stuff that I actually want to talk about at the end because I do actually think there's some like pretty cool stuff going on there.
Yeah, we probably should have talked about that at the beginning, but well. I did forget though that like Sarah spends most of the story trapped in this room. Not trapped, like actually trapped, but just like by the logic of the story, stuck in this damn room because the story won't let her out.
Yeah, Sarah spends a lot of the story not really doing much, but I think that's because like a lot of the stories that, there's nothing only about being a woman, so she spends a lot of the story relegated to the sidelines and trying to like break free, so to speak, and she does eventually in the latter half of the story like finally get out of that room and start contributing to the story. Basically right when they think the Doctor is dead, she basically takes over the role of the Doctor for a while before the Doctor is revealed to be alive, which they do twice in the same story, I might add.
Yeah. Episodes 4 through 6 really did feel like this was all, and I remember talking about this the first time we talked about this story. It's like it feels like it's about to end, and then and then they kind of just like don't end it. It just keeps going, and you can tell like it's pretty damn obvious to me. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's like really obvious that he's not dead in all of these scenes. So.
Yeah. So, at this point, Sarah, I think, leaves the room because she wants to go figure out, because, yeah, again, she thinks the Doctor's dead because of the cave-in. And she goes and she accidentally triggers, like, a defense system.
Yeah, and then Eckersley has to go save her and is like, any longer and your brain would have been fried. And she's like, well, then it's a good thing I didn't get fried. So that's great. She didn't get fried. But then the Doctor is revealed to be alive again. And the Doctor basically, they meet with the Queen again. And the Doctor leaves Sarah Jane there and is like, you should explain to her like the benefits of like woman being in charge. Because this is when we find out that Thalira is basically just a figurehead because Ortron basically has all the power. And she was only crowned because her dad didn't have a male heir. So this is a very patriarchal society that she's like taken over here.
Right, and there's also an element of like she's just a kid, so she doesn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, by the end of the story, you're like, yeah, she knew a lot better than anyone else. But yeah, it's more heavy on the like feminist stuff than that.
Yeah, but actually, like watching this scene, I think I overplayed like how grating and irritating this whole scene was because there's actually one, it's not as long as I remember it being, but two, it really actually like wasn't that blunt about anything that she was talking about as I may have remembered. So I'm actually going to give the story a reevaluation point in the positive direction there.
Yeah, I honestly, having now rewatched this, what was I thinking back then? Like everything we said about this scene is like not what it is.
Yeah,
basically.
I kind of feel like, at least for me personally, kind of entirely missed the point of the whole, like it went completely over my head.
Well, first of all, it's not even shoehorned in. Like it's throughout the entire episode that this is all not culminating, but like this is touching on things that the entire society of Peladon is rooted in. And it's like, first of all, it's not even out of nowhere. Two, it's like one line. I remembered it being, again, longer, but it's one damn line.
It's two lines, I think, but yeah. Like, I agree.
Watching it again, I was like, yeah, that could have been longer. Like, maybe it should have been. And thinking back then, I was like, I thought it was too long, or I don't know. I don't remember, actually, but whatever.
No, yeah, back then, I remember complaining. I was like, this scene is too long, but like, it's really not. Yeah,
maybe Orphan 55 has has softened the landing a bit, with its call out at the end.
Why is Orphan 55 the one that we always point to?
Because it's the one that has the biggest call out at the end. And I didn't even dislike the call out at the end, but a lot of people did.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the most obvious call out in recent years, so. But yeah, I mean, it's also like, this scene is also, it's tied back into the whole story at the end of the story because in this scene, we should mention, this is when Sarah says her now famous, there's nothing only about being a woman line. I don't think that that's a sentiment that's been expressed various other places over the years. But at the end of the story, it's just this. But at the end of the story, when the doctor tells her to work with the miners, she's like, but they're only miners. And Sarah brings the line back. She's like, there's nothing only about being a miner, just like there was nothing only about being a woman.
Yeah, there's also that wordplay there too, bringing back in the age thing. So there's nothing only about being a miner with an O.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of the story I actually liked.
Yeah, like I said, I give the story a reevaluation point in the positive direction. So,
well,
anyway, yeah. So episode 2, they pretty much just prance around for a bit, and then they Ortron captures them for the third time and decides to just execute them without Thalira's permission and chucks them into the Rancor pit.
AKA the Agador pit.
Yeah, and then in episode 3, the Doctor puts Agador at ease by singing the Venusian lullaby from Curse of Peladon. Haroon, Haroon, Haroon.
Yep. Ortron obviously not happy with this outcome because he thought Agador was just going to shred them to bits. But then Thalira comes in and she's like, hey, stop this. And Ortron's like, no, obviously the judgment is wrong. And then she comes back with, you decided to rely on the judgment of Agador, so now you have to follow through with it, whatever the case may be. Just hearkening back to the beginning of the story when Ortron was like, we joined the Federation for good and bad, and we got to go along with them for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I didn't even realize this until now, but we kind of do see Thalira coming more into her own as the leader throughout this entire story.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I realized the first time.
She does have her own character arc, which is more than can be said about most serial-specific characters.
More than can be said about most classic Who characters even. The Doctors usually do, but even then it's thin at best. The companions sometimes do, but even then still pretty thin except for Turlo. Maybe Sarah. Maybe Tegan.
Also, I just realized the scene where Sarah Jane tells everything to Thalira is actually in episode 3, because that's when they bring in the jank chairs we were making jokes about before we started recording. The chairs that literally look like they're going to fall apart.
Yeah, I didn't see that in my notes when we were discussing it, but I just went along with it. Whatever. Explain some things out of order. It's inevitable. Check out Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast.
Yeah, so they bring in this throne for Thalira to sit on while she talks with the Doctor and Sarah Jane, and they put it down, and the backrest wobbles, and then when Thalira sits down on it, it leans backwards, and I was like, that thing looks like it's gonna snap, and Queen Thalira is gonna land up on her back on the floor.
Well, it just goes to show you that Peladon doesn't have much as a society. Even their royalty is sitting in, can you imagine the miners abodes, if all the royals have is just a crappy wooden chair.
Yeah. Well, also the fact that the Doctor and Sarah's chairs look a lot more sturdy than Thalira's.
They also don't have backs.
Maybe that's why they look more sturdy. So
one thing though that I'm looking at my notes here that I did that I thought was kind of weird about this episode is that when Sarah talks about the women's lib thing, she basically goes never mind, and maybe this has more to do actually with the fact that Thalira is young. She goes like something along the lines of like, never mind why you're in charge, so just, be in charge. Which is like a very odd line, like, right? Never mind the basis of why, never mind if you're being in charge is legitimate or wanted, or if its basis is like good or anything. Just be in charge. Just be an absolute monarch and don't care about anything.
Yeah, Thalira has, well, part of her character arc is like believing in herself and her ability to take charge, because
right.
she's very unsure of herself at the beginning and whether or not the people will accept her as a ruler. Excuse me. And over the course of the story, she learns that, yeah, she just has to, like you said, she just has to be an absolute monarch and take charge and just do it. And people will respect her and do it if she does that.
Yeah, the other side of this, which this story expresses, is that like you actually have to be a good person along with that. Mm-hmm. But the first thing alone is just like a bit weird. Which is why I pointed it out, I guess. Anyway, Sarah swears that she saw someone in the refinery when she went in there, but she couldn't tell who it was.
Mm-hmm. Eckersley is acting really suspicious here, and I'd actually forgotten Eckersley was in on this whole thing, so I just wrote a note that's like, Eckersley, stop being so suspicious, and that seems remarkably prescient given the reveal later on.
Yeah, I forgot he was in on it too. I think Ortron decides to take another approach, and he goes and interrogates Alpha Centauri about who the doctor is, and Alpha Centauri can't produce any paperwork or anything about the doctor.
Yeah, she's like, his position is more unique. But Ortron just takes this to mean that the doctor doesn't have paper, so he arrests him and throws him in jail.
Yeah.
Like, they have a literal, like, bar cell for the doctor.
Yep.
So, that's great.
But Gebek gets him out.
Well, we have the return of an ancient trust your doctor meme, the incompetent guard. Because the doctor asks him for a glass of water, and while he's bringing it to him, he does a magic trick that just completely befuddles the guard and gives him enough time to get bonked over the head by Gebek.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the Federation control room, Alpha Centauri has decided, per Eckersley's instructions, and this is when Eckersley's being suspicious, he's basically like, well, it would really help if we could get some troops out here, Too bad there's nobody here who could call for some security forces. Alpha Centauri is like, yes, security forces, I should do that. And then the Ice Warriors show up, and the cliffhanger to episode 3 is the Ice Warriors showing up. But in hindsight, I was like, this is actually a pretty weird like cliffhanger, because it's a cliffhanger that's not explicitly bad or anybody's in trouble, because the last time we would have seen the Ice Warriors, and if like you started in the Third Doctor's era, the only time you saw the Ice Warriors was Curse of Peladon, where they were like the secondary protagonists and were helping the Doctor and King Peladon. So like this cliffhanger of them showing up, like if you had only seen that story, is like, oh yeah, like the Ice Warriors are here and things are gonna like get fixed now. Like that's the cliffhanger, which I thought that was really interesting.
I think it's just more that they're back. Like, hey, these villains that were well loved before, or not villains, but these characters who have been villains and, protagonists, whatever, and who were well liked are now back.
Well, it's really interesting because if you had been watching for a long time, then this cliffhanger means something completely different to you than if like if you started with the Third Doctor's era, you're just like, oh yeah, like these guys who were in the other Peladon story, they're back. Like, yeah, okay, cool. But if you had been watching since the Second Doctor's era, you're like, oh shoot, the Ice Warriors, like they were villains, like stuff's gonna get really real now.
Yeah. Well, you could also, think back to Curse of Peladon too, even if you had been watching from the Second Doctor's era, of like, yeah, they were good. There's some element of like, yeah, what are they doing here? Like, are they on our side like they were in the Curse of Peladon, or what are they up to here? And it becomes clear pretty quickly that they're up to no good. Like it's not really hidden for any long time.
No, it's not, because literally episode 4 starts with Commander Azixir going, this planet is now under martial law. Which, all right, I mean, that's one way to announce your evil intentions to the entire like population of the planet.
Well, yeah, but not fully, right? Like, it could just be like the Federation steps in and decides that it needs to put this planet under martial law, which isn't a good thing. But, like, it isn't necessarily like a super sinister thing that it turns out to be.
Yeah, so they all meet in the main room with Ortron and Thalia, and Ortron is basically like, we will not allow aliens to kill our own troops. And there's a really funny line where Sarah leans over and goes, well, he was willing enough to do it on his own. And the Doctor goes, this is different. They're not from this planet. So. And then I wrote, these costumes look terrible. The Ice Warrior costumes did not age well.
They're the same ones from the 60s I read on the Doctor Who wiki.
Yeah, I seem to remember that when we talked about this the first time. Like, they have not aged well.
Yeah, the Alpha Centauri outfit is the same as well, but they replaced the cloak apparently to indicate that Alpha Centauri is now ambassador of the Federation and is decked out in like some new Federation threads.
Yeah, I mean, it's still just an attempt to hide the phallic nature of the character.
Yeah.
So
what even happens then?
Ortron just accuses the Doctor of hanging with the miners again for literally the third time this story. I'm starting to notice that episodes 1 through 4 are all actually almost identical in terms of plot. But the Doctor goes basically to stop a guy from using the sonic lance to blow up the Citadel because, okay, so the Doctor comes up with this plan where the miners will pretend to help the Ice Warriors mining the Trisilicate, and then they will get the Ice Warriors off the planet by lulling them into a sense of false security. But Edis, whatever his name was, doesn't like this plan, so he stabs his fellow miner and then goes to use the sonic lance to blow up the Citadel, including his own queen, because he's like, we'll just start from scratch, kill all of them. And the Doctor goes to stop him, and then Azixir is like, as soon as he turns on that sonic lance, it's going to blow up in his face.
Yeah, because he implemented a self-destruct mechanism in the sonic lance. So, but we get an actual, like, interesting fight. We get, like, a match between the Doctor and Edis.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was cool.
Yeah, there are a lot of fight sequences in this story. Some of them better than others.
Yeah. This one, I think, was the one that stood out to me. But into episode 5, the self-destruct mechanism activates. Edis dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a funny scene, actually, where Alpha Centauri goes into the throne room and basically just says, like, hey, everyone, we're just, like, totally screwed. Like, we're just totally done.
Episode 5 is hilarious because everybody in episode 5 just has hilarious lines, because there's that, and then there's the line where Eckersley's like, I should never have gotten involved in local politics, and then he immediately goes out to go get involved in local politics by, like, subjugating the miners or something, and I'm like, oh my god.
Well, this is also when they find out that Eckersley is totally in on it. I think they just see him on a view screen conversing with Azixir about how he's totally in on it.
No, what happens is they're in the, like, I think they're in the Temple of Agador or something, and well, because Sarah Jane and Alpha Centauri are looking for the Doctor on, like, the view cam because they see the sonic lawns blow up, and they just accidentally stumble upon a video that's just a video camera tuned on, like, Eckersley and Azixir standing together going like, yes, it's been great how we've been working together to take over this planet, right?
So how about our evil plans, huh? Those are pretty great. Yeah, this is the part where I started zoning out. I think I was just over this episode, and I had totally forgotten about the kidnapping that occurs in the last 10 minutes.
But this is where it gets just absolutely hilarious, because they come up with this plan to distract the Ice Warriors by calling them into the main throne room, because the leader is going to pretend to be sick, and then they'll trap the Ice Warriors in there and run away. But for somehow they don't foresee the immediate problem, which is that one of the Ice Warriors will accidentally step on Thalira's freaking massive cloak. So Ortron runs back to save her and gets himself killed.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Ortron dies.
So, also, there's this hilarious... The other hilarious thing about Eckersley talking with Azixir about his plan is that not only are Sarah Jane and Alpha Centauri listening via the video camera, the Doctor is standing right outside the door with Gebek also listening. Like,
right. We also
they could not have done a worse job of hiding this plan.
We also find out that Eckersley is in this for world domination. Classic motive there, but not all that interesting.
Yeah, he has this... I'm telling you, episode 5 is hilarious because he has this hilarious scene where he's talking about, like, Azixir, he doesn't want anything. He's like, he's just small fry. I'll just give him the Trisilicate and he'll leave, but I'll have control of the planet. And then, like, Azixir is walking in as he says, he's like, oh, hi, Azixir. Nice to see you again. There's also Alpha Centauri has this other hilarious line when Eckersley is, like, helping, he helps her in some way. I don't remember why, but he like doesn't kill her, and she just goes, "Thank you." Oh wait, I gotta do the voice. Thank you, Eckersley, but you're still a traitor.
Yeah, that was good. Also, when Alpha Centauri says like, "I'll summon like some forces to defeat you," and then just goes like, "Help! Help! Help!"
They activate the secret subspace distress beacon. Episode 5 is just a comedy of errors for 25 minutes, and I'm starting to realize it might be my favorite episode of this whole story because of that.
Yeah, I can't fully dislike this story, mostly because of Alpha Centauri. Really wish we had gotten more of Alpha Centauri over the years.
It was really nice when she question mark.
They call it a he. They call Alpha Centauri he in this, but
he comes back in
not Waters of Mars.
The other one on Mars, the recent one. Yeah, totally forgetting the name. The one with the 12th Doctor and Bill. Well, anyway, episode 6. So the Doctor decides to use Agador to convince the miners to revolt. Not to mention that the miners' revolt has like already succeeded so well before on this story, including that time they broke into the armory and got all those space guns. But he incites them to revolt because he shows them that Agador is on their side, and he like kills one of the Ice Warriors. He turns the power up so much the Ice Warriors just vanish. They get like straight vaporized, and Garrick is like, Agador fights for us now. Let's go. So that's episode 6.
Yep, they defeat the Ice Warriors also in the throne room by just like kind of tackling them, which I thought was underwhelming.
Yeah. Pretty much, especially since the Ice Warriors have, like, super overpowered weapons,
And armor. Yeah, I thought it was lame.
One of my notes is, the Doctor has been killed 10 times in this story alone. And then, like, one of my later notes is, Sarah Jane spends so much of the story thinking the Doctor is dead. I can't even imagine how she legitimately believes the Doctor is dead in Planet of the Spiders.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that Agador bites the dust.
Yeah, Eckersley just literally puts a gun to his head and blows his brains out.
God. Poor Agador.
Agador was the most innocent in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe actually still that they killed Agador.
Yeah, it's still the biggest shock death in all of Doctor Who. You think it was Adric? No, Agador. Because unlike Adric, Agador actually was innocent, did nothing wrong, didn't know any better.
Also was awesome, this story doesn't really do anything to make you like Agador, but Curse of Peladon sure did.
Well, I mean, the only time we see Agador in this is when the Doctor calms him down by going, Haroon, Haroon, Haroon.
Yeah, maybe Agador should have played a bigger role in this. Who knows? Watch, just after all the suggestions we've made in this episode, watch like our version of this turn out as like a total mess and just be terrible. Like, yeah, Agador could have played a bigger part, and like maybe it's kept secret that Ortron is like against the Lyra, and like I don't know. Maybe these are all like the drafts that they put out there and discarded because they sucked.
Well, maybe they should have also played more into the whole like class dynamics of this thing, because it seemed really interesting in episode 1 where the miners are like, joining the Federation is like, I'm sure it's great if you're a nobleman who got all the riches from the Federation, but us miners, we didn't get jack from this. We didn't get jack from any of this. Like, we're still just broke and poor.
Right, which is why the Doctor's line later on kind of is weird, because he's like, you have to show everyone that joining the Federation is good for like all parts of society and not just you. And you think back to this scene, you're like, yeah, it wasn't actually that good for the miners. Like, it was actually probably worse for them. So good luck showing them that, Thalira.
Yeah. And also there's like, I don't know if, tell me if you got this, but I got this kind of implication that they're like going to cover up the death of Agador by like just not mentioning it to any of the people on the planet.
No, I didn't think that, but now that you say it, yeah, probably.
The Doctor's kind of just left to leave after killing Agador.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't kill Agador, but he did use Agador. The reason why Agador is even in harm's way to begin with is because the Doctor used him as like a greyhound to sniff out Eckersley in the caves, because Eckersley's taken Sarah Jane as a hostage.
Yeah, we forgot about that. You mean Thalira?
Was it Thalira? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Thalira.
Was it Thalira?
Yep.
All right.
Because he just barges into the throne room and he's like, you're coming with me.
Oh, you're right. Because I have this note here where he like bangs Alpha Centauri to like knock them out, and just conveniently the Alpha Centauri just kind of wanders off screen after getting banged on the head, so we don't actually have to watch Alpha Centauri fall down and pass out.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how they save the day. And then it ends.
Yep.
So definitely not the greatest of stories. Just felt very muddled and circular at times.
Yeah.
And it's very political, both in the sense that it deals with its own politics that I don't necessarily care about. I'm not necessarily compelled by the politics of Peladon. It's still very political in the sense of like the comments it makes on society and stuff like that. Which, people like to say like, yeah, go back to the good old days of Classic Who when it was not political like it is now. But I actually think Classic Who was a lot more like, kind of like what you were saying before. I don't know if we can class it like this because of what I kind of commented on before, but like, it was a lot more like, or at least the writer's intentions as far as they have said a lot of the times is like, yeah, we want to comment on modern society, or like we're drawing on these things that are happening in modern society and putting them in these sci-fi/fantasy settings. And that's something that New Who does not do either as much or as nearly as directly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they never really touch on any of this in New Who anymore, and maybe that's because it has become not outdated, but not as radical as it once was.
Well, I also think the Stephen Moffat era of the show toned this down a lot, because that Stephen Moffat himself and the era as a whole was far more concerned with like weird time stuff than any other part of the show, really. So that like took center stage a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of undeniable that Moffat did really like his weird, convoluted time travel, for whatever that was worth. I had a couple things I wanted to touch on here at the end quickly, if you've got no objection.
I don't have anything except the costumes, which we kind of touched on already.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the costumes because it was really interesting how they dressed all the royals in purple, because I think we've talked about this on the show before. Purple is a color that is historically associated with wealth and royalty, because purple dye has historically been very difficult to acquire. So if you had purple clothing, you therefore had money. But I also thought it was interesting how Peladon, the leaders of Peladon are all dressed in purple, and then like kind of the antagonists are all green. And by antagonists, I mean like the Federation, who are in some ways antagonistic because the Ice Warriors are declaring martial law, but they're all dressed in green. So Alpha Centauri is green, the Ice Warriors are green. And then the interesting part about that is that they put the Doctor in his green coat for the story. Purple and green are complementary colors, but it's just interesting how Peladon is very purple and the kind of aliens, so to speak, are all in green.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Just something I noticed while I was watching this story. And the other thing I just wanted to say is the special effects in this episode were like, the film effects anyway were video effects were pretty cool, actually. Like the bending of space when the sonic lance was fired and when the Ice Warrior guns were fired, and like the mind probe, I guess, that Eckersley's using to fry people's minds with like the rainbow whirlwind on screen. Like I think they all looked really good.
Yeah, they were good.
Which surprised me because I think I expected lower quality special effects. So, and that's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I don't think my opinions on the story overall have changed much. So,
yeah, again, I think mine have gone down overall. There are certain aspects of the show that there's certain aspects of this story that I think I like more this time because I didn't pick up on them the first time, but I don't know. Overall, yeah, maybe I'm just the same. I just didn't really like it.
Yeah.
But so I did this. This is something we do on Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast, which is our classic sci-fi podcast. Check that out. Which is that we actually detail the actors who are in this and talk about what else they'd been in. And I figured we should probably start doing this for Doctor Who. I actually did it last week. I made notes about this last week, but I forgot to talk about it. So I guess here we are this week. On Inevitable, we actually like to call this segment which of Britain's 10 actors are in this story, because of our running joke or whatever that Britain only has 10 actors. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I don't know if we'll continue this, but here it is in this episode at least. And I guess it'll be really weird if we don't continue it. So yeah. We have Nina Thomas as Thalira. She was in a lot of stuff, but nothing that I recognized. I'm getting most of my stuff from IMDb, Wikipedia, and the Doctor Who wiki, by the way. Mm-hmm. We again have Donald G. as Eckersley. He looked like he had pretty big roles in Z-Cars and Coronation Street to me. He was also there's a video short apparently from 2010 called Warriors of Mars, which I'm guessing is about people who were in Ice Warrior stories. So he's in that. I bring that up because a lot of the actors in this were in that video. So he's in that. He was in Midsummer Murders. He was in Yes Minister. He was in The Avengers. We have Frank Gatliff as Ortron. He played a guy named Dastor on Blake 7 in Harvest of Kairos.
Oh, God.
Surprisingly enough. Apparently, so I didn't remember this character, but I looked him up, and apparently he is Servalan's aide.
Huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Huh. Don't really remember it very well.
Nah, neither do I. He was also in the new Avengers, Z-Cars, The Avengers, the original one, and he was in Secret Agent / Danger Man, that story that Patrick McGowan created before he dove off the deep end and created The Prisoner. We have Rex Robinson as Gebek. He was Dr. Tyler, the Three Doctors.
What?
Yeah. He was also Dr. Carter in The Hand of Fear. And all three of these stories, so The Three Doctors, Hand of Fear, and this one, were directed by Lenny Mayne.
Oh, jeez. The connections run too deep for me.
He was in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
What? And now we have become Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Ah, that's why it's called that. One of the only funny jokes from Family Guy. He
was also in Yes Minister. He was in something called Cold Warrior, which might have something to do with the Ice Warriors. I don't know. But he was in it. I didn't look up what it was. Probably should have, but I didn't. He was in something called 6 Days of Justice, which I think I just wrote down because it looked like a big role for him. And he was in Softly Softly. Not Softly Softly Task Force, just the regular Softly Softly. We have Alan Bennion as Azixir. He played a bunch of different Ice Warriors, so he was... I didn't write down the name correctly. Oh, he was Slar in The Seeds of Death. And he was Islir in Curse of Peladon, so kind of Azixir's counterpart in that story. He was also in 6 Days of Justice. He was in Zedkar's as well. And, again, the thing called Warriors of Mars, a little short video. And then finally we have, I still don't know how to pronounce her first name, Isan Churchman as Alpha Centauri. She has a really extensive acting career, as you might guess. She was in Softly Softly Task Force, Zedkar's, The Railway Children, a bunch of other stuff that I didn't recognize. And she actually retired in 1999, but she came back for a special appearance in Doctor Who in 2017 to reprise her role as Alpha Centauri.
Nice.
One of the most euphoric moments from New Who.
It was also one of the greatest. We talk about Chris Chibnall keeping secrets from the fans, but Alpha Centauri showing up out of nowhere was like one of the greatest coups of secrecy that I think any showrunner has pulled off so far.
She was also, when she did that, the oldest, and still is the oldest person ever involved in Doctor Who, at age 92.
Wow.
Yep.
And she sounded not a day over 30. Or however old she was when she voiced Alpha Centauri in this story.
She was like 45 here, I think.
Well, so then even better, she doesn't sound a day over 30.
Well, okay, she was 92 in 2017, so that means she was born in 1930 or 29 or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, she must have been like 40-something in this.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for doing that work that I didn't do.
Yeah, no, let's see if we never planned on doing it. I just wanted to start doing it because we did it on our other podcast, and it's always fun to
it's always do. Fun. Yeah, let's keep doing it, honestly.
We probably should have been doing it for a while now, but hey.
Yeah. Well, we have emails. One that arrived earlier this week and one that arrived literally while we were recording this. So both of them from Steven. The first one, Audio Master. Hey guys, I've been listening to a lot of Big Finish lately. I listened to Master and then got to your episode about the audio. I really like your idea of how there should be a story where the Doctor is about to regenerate and we don't see who the next Doctor is, and then the next episode is a facility with a bunch of people with amnesia. One of you also mentioned how you thought this audio would do a bait and switch and then reveal that the titular Master is actually not the Master. Funny enough, something like that happens in another 7th Doctor audio I listened to recently called The House of Blue Fire. Speaking of colors, I'm surprised that neither of you mentioned the green death when you got on the topic of the color green representing death. I think you might be onto something with the theory of Dylan being death. Also, the Grinch and Shrek are green. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, when are you starting that Harry Potter podcast? You should call it Trust Your Potter. The movies have like 3 doctors in them anyway, so why not? Cheers, Steven. Well, did we ever mention doing a Harry Potter podcast? Is that something that we ever...
I don't remember. I mean, probably we did because Steven is referencing it. But that's the thing of, like, when people go back to our old episodes and comment on them, which doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, I did say that. Like, I completely forgot about that, and I, like, completely don't agree with it now. But, like, yeah, I guess I did say that. Maybe not that last bit, but but something along those lines. It's just weird.
Yeah, just weird. Yeah,
but
maybe
don't stop doing it.
I was going to say, maybe we'll listen to that audio at some point in Trust Your Doctor's future. Yeah,
we definitely have a lot of audios coming in the future because we're caught up and we are going to exhaust all the other stuff that we have planned eventually.
Yep. And once everything's exhausted, you know what that means. Audios and books every week. Yep. Well, so anyway, let's get onto this other email. The subject is just subject. Okay. I just listened to the Massacre Redux episode. Kiyan said that he could feel the grim specter of death when Dylan suggested it's possible you guys might take a week off in the future. So maybe this reinforces the death greed related stuff you might remember from the last email.
Oh boy.
Anyway, the discussion of different versions of the Massacre got me thinking. I would legit be curious what your guys' thoughts would be on the version with narration and the Target novelization. Of course, you probably don't want to do that right away, haha. But it might also be funny to do a string of episodes before Revolution of the Daleks where you review every version of Shada, since I still think it's possible that Shada is involved in that special. I think you guys might have already reviewed a version that had the scenes that were filmed plus animation, if I recall correctly. I've only experienced two versions, the 1992 version where Tom Baker plays a museum curator, I think narrating in between the film scenes, and the version that's an animated webcast with the Eighth Doctor. I know that Big Finish has also done an audio with the Eighth Doctor. It might have the same audio as the webcast scenes. They're both released in 2003, but I'm not sure. Apparently there was also some fan novelization in 1989. Maybe you'll find a lot of Shada fan fiction. Who knows? Shada didn't get an official novelization until 2012. There's even an audiobook version of this novelization, so that's yet another version, if you will. And there's a 2017 version animated by BBC with the Fourth Doctor. Is reviewing all these versions back to back a bad idea? Probably, but I figured I'd just throw it out there. Cheers, Stephen. Well, I do seem to remember that the animated version they released, I think, is the same audio as the Big Finish audio, if I remember correctly, or a truncated form of the audio that Big Finish recorded. So there's that. And we did do the one with the animation, right? Yeah,
yep,
we did.
Yep.
The Ian Levine animated one.
As for eventually getting to the Massacre audio with the soundtrack thing with narration, that seems like an inevitability at this point. Like, we've been talking about it so much and how we don't want to do it so much that at some point, maybe not soon, but at some point, we're probably going to do it.
Unfortunately. Hopefully not anytime soon, because I need to put the Massacre behind me again.
Yeah, we need another 5 years to cool off the Massacre.
Yeah, I can only revisit the Massacre on a 5-year cycle, because that's how long it takes me to get over the PTSD-inducing trauma that is that story. So, I'm curious to know why you think Shada is going to be involved in Revolution of the Daleks. Is it just because the Doctor's in a space prison? Because that seems like a pretty thin connection to me. But hey, maybe it is. I mean, it'd be kind of weird for them to like dig up an old Douglas Adams story that actually never even like made it to screen to connect to for this upcoming story. But hey, who knows? You know, who knows?
Weirder things have happened.
Yeah, like introducing an entire new incarnation of the Doctor that like nobody knows where they appear in the timeline, you know? Weirder things have happened. Alpha Centauri coming back. Again, weirder things have happened.
Exactly.
Oh, boy. Well, on that note, I don't have anything else to talk about this week.
Yeah, neither do I.
So if there's anyone out there who would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, ingredients, love letters, your thoughts on Monster of Peladon. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook, also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be revisiting Underworld, that Bob Baker and Dave Martin classic. But until then, the end.